Today I want to talk about the women's rights movement in Iran after the 1979 revolution and how the movement was faced with the discriminatory laws against women and how they dealt regarding changing these laws and practices. And finally, and then I want to talk about the roles that the international community can play on the women's rights movement in Iran. So after the revolution, many laws were changed under the pretext of Islamizations. Some of these laws pertained women, like the law which obliged women to cover their faces or bodies in public places, or the law regarding the minimum age of marriage, which sets the age of marriage 9 for girls. Some discriminatory provisions were enacted in the family law, like divorce became the right of the husband only in the family, and also some discriminatory provisions were enacted against the mother in the sense of custody of children after divorce. Regarding the blood money of the woman became half of a man, and the age of criminal responsibility for girls became 9 as the penal code. And that considering that many punishments in the penal code are very severe punishments, such as execution, that was much low below the international standards. And also women were barred from certain positions, like becoming judges. So after 1979, women were facing with these laws, plus the laws which already existed before the revolution, which was also discriminatory towards women, like the law which required women to have the permission of their husband for traveling outside the country, or the existence of honor killing or polygamy in the laws. So for 10 or 15 years after the revolution, there was no unified campaign or no established NGOs in that sense of a term. But this didn't mean that the Iranian women were silent. There were protests during the first months of the revolution, for example, against the obligatory veiling of the women. And then slowly women learned how to protest against the discriminatory laws, each by their own way, like by organizing campaign or seminars or writing articles, books, or organizing workshops, or even lobbying with the politicians, and in different ways. And specifically when around 20 years ago, the reformist president came into power, Mohammad Khatami, more freedom were given to the society. So more NGOs were established and more campaigns were formed in order to challenge these laws. So what did the women's rights movement gain through all of these struggles? I want to start with the laws. It might seem more tangible to understand the change. Women's rights movements managed to change some laws, not a lot. I'm going to bring some example of these changes. For example, the minimum age of marriage, which was 9 after the revolution, it was risen to 13. In case of custody, even though some changes were made, still, even though this existing law is still not equal towards father and mother after the divorce, women's rights movement managed to make some changes in favor of the women. For example, before the amendment made in the custody law, the custody of the children after the divorce were given to the mother for girls up to the age of 2, and boys for girls up to the age of 7, and boys up to the age of 2, and after that it would automatically be given to the father. But now, according to the new changes, the custody will be given to the mother until the age of 7, and then the court will decide based on the best interest of the child. So in case of blood money, still the blood money of women is half of a man, but the difference is being paid by the government. Also, the share of inheritance of women in most cases is lesser than men, but women's rights movement managed to pressurize the parliament to make some changes in some areas. And divorce, also regarding the divorce, now with the new amendment in the civil law, women can also file divorce under certain circumstances. So it's not completely in the hand of the husband anymore. And also women managed to become judges at some levels, not the presiding judge, even though, but still it was, we can say it was a progress for women. This, and along with some other changes, we can say it was all the changes that the women's rights movements managed to make in the laws. One might rightly argue that these are not a lot, and there are still a lot of discriminatory provisions within the laws, different laws, criminal law, family law, civil law. But what might be the impediment for the women's rights movement with all the struggles that the women have taken? In my opinion, the impediment for the movement is a guardian council, which is members are not elected by people. Our members are selected either directly or indirectly by their leader. And the Guardian Council is a very powerful council, and it has the right to veto the in Parliament's enactments. So at many points, the women's rights movement managed to make the Parliament to enact some laws which were in favor of women, to amend some discriminatory laws, or enact some laws which could bring justice, gender equality into the law, but the law were further down, at the upper stage, vetoed by the Guardian Council. But having said that, can we say that the women's rights movement was not successful at all? I think the answer to this is not also very simple, and it's not a simple no. Because even though women's rights movement might not seem very successful in changing the laws, I think it wasn't without, it had some other results from the movements. For example, women's rights movement managed to bring the discourse of gender equality and women's rights into surface and surround it to all parts of the society. During the first years of the revolution, a politician, political party, for everyone, the issue of women's rights and gender equality was considered as unimportant, periphery at best, or sometimes even a distractive discourse towards the main role of advance. But now, with the help and struggle of the women's rights activists and the different campaigns that they have made, and some have been very innovative, all the candidates of various elections, presidential election, parliament election, even city council elections, they kind of try to bring the issue of women's rights, with their agendas. Even some of the hardliners are doing so. And also the discourse has spread among even the religious segment of the society, and some religious thinkers within the recent years have clearly spoken and talked about the issue of women's rights in Islam, and many have opposed and objected to the obligatory veiling of women's hair and body in Islam. And some have even paid the high price of going to jail or living in exile for that. So I think this is something that we can't just forget about it. And that how the women's rights movement managed to spread the discourse with its various campaigns. One of the campaigns was now campaigning 1 million signatures to change the discriminatory laws, which this campaign did not have any leader, but all the women participating in the campaign started to engage with other people in cities, in park, and just let them know about the discriminatory provisions and gain signature addressing to the parliament to change some laws. So with the effort of the women's rights activists, they spread this dialogue of this discourse of women's rights was spread among the many segments of the society. And I think that's one good thing about the campaign. And another thing I want to talk about, I have been asked many times about the role of the international community and the women outside Iran and how they can help the women's rights movement in Iran. Before answering to this question, I have to say that the women's rights movement in Iran is not monolithic. Like there are many voices, many sounds in this movement, and women in this movement take different approaches and have different strategies. While some are more conservative and try to don't tackle the issues which are among the clear red lines of the government, and also use the methods which are not in the clear breach of the law, Some are acting more radical, and they even challenge the most taboo subject in the eyes of the government, and they are not afraid to break the discriminatory laws to protest against this discrimination. And both groups have their own reasons too. Like the one who are taking a more conservative approach argues that change needs to be done within the society and gradually, and that any drastic action which will lead to the imprisonment of women or forcing them into exile, which has happened a lot during the last 2 decades, is not good for women's rights movement in the long term. And the radical ones also argue that we shouldn't always let the government to design the red lines for us and then challenge those stuff. And sometimes change needs through breaking the bad laws. And they bring the example of many countries where people manage to challenge the governments for making discrimination against the black people by breaking the law and doing civil obedience and this stuff. So also, what I'm trying to say is also regarding the issue of the international community and how outsider can help insider. Also, there are some divisions within the women's rights movement. I think the majority of the women's rights in Iran argues that the international community can be helpful, specifically in areas where, due to the censorship and where the subject is within the clear red lines of the government, it cannot be said within the Iranian media. So the international community or people outside in Iran can be the voice of these people, both regarding the covering of the news and the campaign and all this stuff. And also in helping the international community watch the Iranian government, for example, by assigning the special rapporteur on human rights in Iran. I think there's more consensus on that. But there are also some actions regarding the women's rights movement and pressuring the government into something or asking the government to do something, otherwise boycott the government on some level. There are some more dividedness on this stuff. And I want to bring you 2 examples in this regard. For example, within the recent years, there have been 2 campaigns launched outside Iran by the human rights organization and activists. One of them asked the International Volleyball Federation to put pressure on the Iranian government and to deny them the right to host a tournament if it did not allow the women to enter to the stadium to watch the matches. Which is very strange why the Iranian government is doing this, considering that it is not even against Iranian laws. But for some reason, it's been like this for some years. And some women have been even jailed for just trying to go to the stadium to watch the matches. Another campaign was regarding the chess match and putting pressure on the Iranian government and denying the right to host a tournament if it does not allow women to choose how they want to wear dresses. And while some activists inside Iran were in favor of these pressures and say that the Iranian government needs some kind of pressures and the Iranian women needs some kind of solidarity, and that this kind of sanction does not affect ordinary people, is not like economic sanction, which will affect ordinary people. There are some women's rights activists which says any kind of action against the country, the government, like isolation of the government, will lead to the isolation of its people, even either directly or indirectly. And for example, they bring the example that in this case, for example, if you deny the right to host Iran to host the championship, then Iranian women have to travel outside, and according to the law, women need the permission of their husband. And in the past, we had some cases when the Iranian women couldn't go outside, some even football stars and famous cases where they couldn't go outside because their husband did not let them go. And also that's how women's rights, how it's bad for the population in general to just isolate them. So in these cases are more sensitive, and there is a different opinion among the people inside Iran. But in general, I think there are more consensus in that Iranian women like to have a platform and want their news to be covered specifically when it can be covered by the official media inside Iran. And of course, social media has helped people a lot and has helped people break the censorship, but still inside might need more platforms outside the country. And I think this is one case that there is more consensus on that. Thank you. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to say. Thank you.